Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting, January 2nd. Happy New Year of the Capital Program Committee. It's 1:10 p.m. And let's see, do a roll call. Brooke Moore, Barry Rector, PJ Kaiser, myself. And this meeting is being audio video recorded. Anything you say, share, or display will be shown on the town's YouTube channel. Please act accordingly. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Barry on your motion.
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
PJ? Let the record indicate that's a thumbs up in the dark. Okay, we are here primarily today to wrap up, off the screen, wrap up our decision-making on recommendations for a handful of requests. Along the lines of this, we could, depending on how you guys feel, we could do this one of two ways.
Yeah.
We can vote here today, or we can send out we can vote to poll the members and have them respond to Sue. And then we would get a full member vote. I don't have a preference either way, but
Is that okay in terms of
yeah, because we're not gonna be,
process?
we won't be deliberating. So as long as we actually vote to proceed that way, then we're authorizing ourselves to vote. But we wouldn't, if we were voting and if we were having some type of voting amongst,
Yeah.
if we were sending a chain email,
Mhm.
that would be a violation because it could be perceived as a deliberation.
Yeah.
And the other thing would be is we wouldn't have any basis for doing a email vote if we didn't vote to do so here today. On the heels of that, it would be conditioned upon the fact that we would then ratify it at our next, the results would be announced by name at the next meeting, and we would ratify that. So that it does meet the public purview. I don't have either way, but there's like this, the solid waste is in here. There's some larger ticket numbers that I might feel more comfortable if everyone voted on, but it's not a necessity. Any thoughts on that?
Have you heard from anyone else?
Jill is away,
Got it.
Howard, I haven't heard back, and Christie, I haven't heard back.
Yeah, did they know this was gonna happen today?
Notice was put out via email, by Sue, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of your call for being the chair.
Okay, yeah,
I'm fine either way.
I was just thinking I'd get feedback from you guys on it.
Yeah, I just don't, I mean, I've never experienced that as a process at anywhere I've served in government. Yes.
I know sometimes that being kind of like the sole administrator of the Cannabis Advisory Committee, that's what I've got to do sometimes, because I have no supportive staff.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. And if he's gonna use Sue to do it, then, that's a little bit more neutral.
Yeah, we're open, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but we had to go to these courses for 7 years for all these different committees. Open meeting would be, deliberation would be not allowed.
That would be a big problem.
And then obviously just decorum would indicate that we want to vote, the final vote, the vote to be public. So we could aggregate through Sue and then just announce the results at the next meeting. But in the meantime, the idea is that between now and the next meeting, we can move forward with having resolved these requests.
Yeah, I kind of feel like because of my not, a meeting having been, we've already delayed this because of my delay in getting here.
Yeah,
That puts me on both sides of the coin. Like I created a problem where it became more difficult for people to be here. And then on the other hand, waiting for an email vote is a further delay.
yeah.
So I'm kind of inclined to, how about we do this? We vote the members present, and if anyone has concern with the outcome, like
Yeah.
their position
That's
is
true. We
not
could-
accepted, they
Yeah.
can do a vote to reconsider, and we
Yeah.
can do those. A
I'm
motion to
happy to-
reconsider,
I'm happy
and
to
then
do
we
it
can
that
send
way,
those
too.
by email.
PJ, do you want to ask PJ?
Does that
just
make
like a thumbs
sense?
up To
Thumbs
do it
up.
that way?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, perfect.
Yeah, and then I would just suggest that if there was. The only potential issue with that is that if. I just want to think through aloud
but
the,
it has to be someone who
Aspect.
voted. Just a motion to reconsider can only be brought by someone who
yeah,
Voted
was
in the
on the-
negative.
was on the
Oh.
winning side of the vote,
Oh,
right?
that's right, I'm sorry.
I
That's
was-
right, that's
So-
correct. And I was actually thinking more along the lines of where we end up in terms of the workflow process, that if we allow it to be if we open it up again and for some reason something's reversed, how far, I guess we're not gonna be that far along in the workflow
Let-
process, so
Let
it's no
me,
big
let me
deal.
ask you a question. Our next meeting's Thursday, right?
Yeah.
You want to just put out notification to people between now and Thursday?
That you're
It's like,
supposed,
we
that you're
need-
supposed to
we-
come to your meetings?
We need you, even if it's by Zoom.
Yeah,
Please just show up, and then that way there's no question about what happens on Thursday.
yeah. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we,
We can go.
in the event that there isn't a forum for some reason on Thursday.
Yep.
Why don't we go ahead along the lines of Brooke's suggestion?
Sure.
And we seem to have consent, Barry's in on it, PJ's in on it. We can at least get a vote. We've got it on paper. If the world falls apart between now and Thursday and we don't have a
There's a vote on
forum,
the table.
we can move forward with
Right.
what we have.
Yep,
Okay,
agree, or not.
or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we can move forward with the established votes.
I
Right,
mean,
there
maybe
you go.
what we, yeah, I
That
mean,
works. That way, one way or another. we'll
if
make
it's
it work.
close, maybe we just vote to reconsider anything that is,
Okay, so I'm just gonna run us through the items. Sue, you mentioned that the EV charging stations may get pulled. Yes, confidence level. Yo, you're muted, I'm sorry.
Okay, there we
Sure.
go. It has been officially pulled.
Has been, okay, so we will do that as an outlier.
Yeah.
Barry,
Noah's here. Did he have something for us?
He's
just
auditing.
before? Are you auditing?
correct.
There you go.
no one
Okay,
just
happy.
loves Capcom meetings.
There you go. God bless you.
Noah's thinking that he's gonna sign up for the next,
Now, for the next
he
iteration,
wants to be able to say he attended multiple meetings.
there you go.
Ground mapping radar for downtown historic sidewalks.
Yeah,
Sue, was that, we received additional information, no change in status from the town side? It's still part of the request packet?
Yes, I think you had notified Holly before, based on all the information she provided, that she didn't need to attend the meeting.
Yes, just wanted to make sure as we're going through this small list that there's been no changes in the last known status. Okay. This, just to lay the groundwork, this came out below the average and it was, and we basically decided that we wanted additional information. That information's been provided.
Correct.
Is there any discussion on this? I would suggest we have some discussion because the normal vote would be for this to be put to an out here because it's so low and
yeah, I suspect maybe people put it low because of, and maybe didn't go back in and adjust with the new information. Is that a possibility?
it is. And the other aspect is that because it's a new project, it's gonna rank lower than one that's been on the books, that's been in
Yeah.
for previous years, and there's various other criterion that it may not score high on. May I?
Yeah,
Comment?
please, I want, yeah.
So for me, the idea here is it's relatively small dollars that could be very beneficial to one, get this particular scope of work started and completed. And two, that could, I think it's a good pilot type project because we have like-kind funding coming in from
CPCs.
it's CPC, a nonprofit organization.
Yes, it's the preservation folks, yeah.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see if if this avenue can be developed, it's successful, and then it can be opened up a little bit further Because there's a ton of historic preservation work that could be done on this island that isn't getting done. And so for me, with a little bit of background in that, I think it's an important project. Barry or PJ, any thoughts? And if there's no more, somebody might make a motion.
I'll make a motion at this point that we include it in the,
Current year?
current year.
Okay, on your motion,
Aye.
Brooke,
I,
PJ? Okay, that carries unanimously, so that'll be
There we
a
go.
current year.
and if I could comment, I agree with you, Stephen, that the financial partnership with the CPC and a private nonprofit
Yeah.
to share the financial burden for the project is a model we're gonna need to do a lot more of in coastal resilience and, you know,
Right.
Yeah.
Going
And
forward.
there seem to be other tangible benefits that'll be coming in the pipeline as well too, if we do this. That's really what caught my attention,
mhm.
was the ability to solicit more grants and stuff by doing this one project, so.
Okay, our next up, thank you, appreciate the feedback. Climate action plan, we requested additional information, which we received, and this required a vote. It is below the average and, within the standard deviation, so we would need to either vote it for the out year or vote it for a current year. Discussion?
I'm thinking that I'd prefer to put that into an out year at this point. I don't see anything right on the radar saying, screaming at me that we need to be doing it. And the thing is, I've also got a fairly good clip on the agenda here this year for capital expenditures, so
Hmm,
I think I'd like to defer that.
okay,
And someone can certainly
no, that's fine.
prove me wrong here.
No,
Yeah, it's just,
It's feedback, what we're looking for. Brooke, any comments additional?
You know, I generally thinking ahead, collaborating, coordinating, I think are good goals. I also think, you know, we've run headlong into opposition on some, green energy projects.
Mhm.
That's been super disappointing to me.
mhm.
And you know, there's a part of me that says if we do this, then there's a commitment to clean energy policy going forward that could have ripple effects through some of these other attempts
Mhm.
to, you know, like the Wanna solar
Solar.
project
Yeah.
that's, you know, probably going nowhere.
So maybe for these types of things for current year, fiscal year coming up, they might be better absorbed into projects that are being advanced through the philosophy, the approach. There can be a hat tip, because it is a select board, correct, strategy goal,
Mhm.
Yeah,
strategy item and goal.
I mean, I guess. I look at the climate, I'm sorry, coastal resilience plan.
Yep.
And I see how the forethought and planning of that has pushed the ball forward on a lot of projects,
Right.
right? So it's the leaning into it from a thinking process that can translate into action later. And if we kick this down the road, are we then just kicking those initiatives down the road in some way, right?
Yeah,
As a consolidated planning and thinking exercise.
and the other side of that could be that these, at the same time, they're not. Well, the overall is not being picked up and run with. The individual aspects that can be implemented inside other projects. So an example could be the solar project that was discussed and that you just mentioned, or there's probably a variety of other climate action plan related requests and projects that will be implemented that aren't gonna not be implemented because this doesn't proceed.
However, I find resistance comes when people don't understand how a project fits into a bigger plan.
No, that makes sense too.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing this housing project? What's the big picture? We've asked that question of
Yeah,
various,
Mhm.
project proponents in here. Where's the big picture thinking and why are we choosing this project over that? There's more opportunity for opposition to something when it doesn't, when it's not a piece of a comprehensive package.
Right.
I guess is kind of what I'm trying to say.
and
So-
then, and you think this is, so you think this is one that we should be proceeding with then, or you think
I'm,
for this current year?
from that logic, I would say get started with the thinking and planning now.
Right,
To facilitate support for projects as they come that fit under this.
okay,
Area.
no, that makes sense, I just want to make sure I was
Yeah.
clear on your.
Yeah.
So for me, the concern here is that this is a very ambitious scope
Yes,
for a very relatively insignificant amount of money. So it really becomes like an avenue for.
Can they
a
actually
much
do it?
Larger project.
yeah,
And I personally I feel a couple of different ways about that. I agree with you, number one. Number two, I'm concerned about what I just said. Number three, the, saturation of our professional staff resources.
yeah.
And if we don't have the money allocated for something like this, are we, by doing a third or a quarter start, are we really doing the project planning, strategizing justice, or are we actually kind of maybe taking a step backwards, even though we think we're taking a step forward?
Okay, so I'm willing. I would perhaps send a message back saying, feels like your scope isn't actually big enough for what you hope to achieve. But I don't want to be sitting in this room a year from now saying, oh, you're asking for too much. Why don't you start with something smaller?
The funding,
Yeah, well,
Or
just
the
the
scope,
project. Yeah.
funding for the scope.
Yeah.
Or conversely, tighten up your scope, because it's a pretty broad scope.
Yeah,
Okay, so I would agree with that. I think if we convey back, and it even can be, I think, beneficial to put in our recommendations as a footnote, why we put this in the out year. And I think it'd be beneficial for select board members to know and FinCom members to know, and it becomes a recorded part of the process of what it is we're expecting. And I think that has some value when people are looking at it and saying, oh, Capcom decided the climate action plan didn't need to be advanced this year. Why was that? There's a footnote. So I would agree with your comment about a recommendation. I think we can convey it to the department head, and I think we can somehow encapsulate it as a footnote.
and one question I didn't think to ask, is
Yeah.
this at all a requirement of the green communities designation? That's not indicated anywhere, and I don't think in the notes, but,
I did not see it as a legal requirement.
okay,
Sue, do you happen to know? I don't have
that's a
it
very specific, I mean, it's,
handy. No, it's a good question. I think that it would have been, it would
they
have
would
come
have
up.
mentioned it, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Because they want to,
we want to
advance.
check as many boxes as we can on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be an out.
So for instance, like we get these requests for EV charging stations, right?
Yeah,
Where do they fit within a climate action plan, right? So I kind of
That's-
want to have a climate action plan so I can measure those projects against it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And for me, the concept of scope is this at the asking price is so, the scope is so large at such a relatively insignificant amount of money that how are we gonna get to that level of detail on where do EV charging stations fit into the plan if either the scope isn't changed to be condensed or the funding doesn't come up so that it can be a much more comprehensive plan. So I think that's a good example of where the amount of money that's in here doesn't seem to me to be sufficient to address a comprehensive plan, because the scope is so big.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm repeating what we've talked about already, but
Okay. Well,
I think what would be helpful for them is to go out and revisit anything that would fall into those categories, like you said, the EV charging stations, just as a for instance.
mhm.
And the other thing, maybe to give it a little bit more flesh to it, it would be to take those projects that we're looking at and put them into low, medium, and high range. Or not range, what's the word? I'm looking for?
Prioritization.
Priorities. In other
Alright.
words, we see the EV station as something accomplishable, we see the solar farm maybe as a long range because of this. But those kind of things I think would be a little bit more meaningful in terms of what's going on.
okay,
Yeah,
that sounds good.
okay, so we leave it, we don't need to take action, right, or do we need to vote?
We would vote it as an out year. I'm thinking what we'll do is just, well, we could just,
Want to vote everything in the end?
yeah, I think we'll just do them in the end. We've done it a little bit different to start, but we might as well.
But, yeah, whatever.
Town employee housing feasibility, design and permitting, this required additional information which we received. And we need to vote, this is above our. Yeah, above that. If this would go into the, if this would go into, this would go into the hopper as a current year, if that's based on its scoring. Any additional comments? Thoughts?
I'm 1,000% behind this,
About doing it now?
Yeah,
critical.
I mean, it ranks there. We've reviewed it.
Yep.
Okay. 24 Surfside Road property upgrades, supplemental funding. I would ask Sue, is it possible for you to pull up the report version to see what the team ranking was? If you go to reports versus this request, Capcom Rory, because the Capcom Rory one isn't always updating, but the report version is updating. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm. Hold on, I'm gonna try.
So we'll come back to that one. Okay, public safety auxiliary building, this scored in the percentile that it would advance. Are there any thoughts to the contrary?
Mm-mm.
Good, very
Because
good.
why wait till it gets more expensive?
Oof.
That's true.
And we're investing in vehicles all the time.
Did we ever resolve the issue?
Yes.
Okay,
There's
I missed
Not
that.
shingling is not a cost, it's not a substantial cost difference, $45,000.
Oh, all right.
Because you'd have to replace it with steel siding.
Yeah,
So, right, wasn't that the bottom line?
Yeah, it was a relatively insignificant number,
good to know.
because the
Yep.
cladding system would change, but the overall gross
No,
cost.
You just answered my question. Otherwise, we need to do it.
Okay, and we're gonna come back to this one. I think that this has been. Wait a minute.
Wasn't that pushed?
Yeah, I want to just verify with Sue, because I had some conflicting notes.
Okay.
Surfside maintenance, so now we're in enterprise accounts, Surfside maintenance and admin facility. This is a supplemental funding request. We had required additional information. That ranking does put it in the percentile that it would be recommended for the current year. Are there any thoughts on that?
I concur with the ranking.
Likewise, the new 10-wheel dump, Western Star dump truck. Any thoughts on that? To the contrary, no CP, okay. The next group of three are the same and they relate all to the solid waste enterprise. And it is the purchase the composter, purchase of transfer station, and the Tioli roll-off truck purchase. We had, Jill had asked for some additional deliberation. She couldn't be here.
Yeah.
The last couple of meetings. I feel that this is probably of the one group that we might have some additional discussion on at the next meeting, but I feel comfortable moving forward with it.
What do you have to say?
I
Curious.
have to say, if we don't move forward, we have a serious problem in terms of the operating contract in the future.
Okay,
This is a well, reviewed plan for future operations of our waste
uh-huh,
on Nantucket includes owning these assets.
all right,
And if Capcom and the voters, don't approve those acquisitions, it is going to make the future contract for the operating landfill very difficult for us to regain or increase the amount of control we have over the operations out there, which I think the community has been clamoring for
I agree.
quite some time. So this is a critical part of that
Okay,
transition to a more transparent and controlled town managed operation out there.
gotcha.
So,
And I'm asking you
Yeah.
specifically as well, because I know you've been pretty closely tracking this thing. So you definitely have a little bit more of a knowledge base than I do.
Yeah.
In terms of, I mean, grossly, I can see why we'd want to do it,
yeah,
but,
you know, the complexities of the dynamics between the operator and the town are partly because we don't
Yes.
control the facilities.
and it's not like they're just gonna pack it up, move it out, and buy all new stuff either, let's be serious.
Well, yeah, I mean, the replacement cost for the transfer station, I'll just give you a little detail.
Yeah.
That everyone's gonna see at the January 11th is well over $5 million, but you have to design it, permit it, find a
Yeah.
location for it,
Yep,
because you can't shut down, you can't stop transferring for 2
Right.
years while you build a new building that's gonna cost you more than to buy the one you're buying. So it's a good financial decision, but operationally it's necessary.
I get it.
And the same with owning the composter, that then we have
I mean,
say over what waste streams go through it, which allows us more flexibility if we want to manage our waste streams differently. So it's,
and I can't even envision the permitting process for that as well. That would be just nightmare.
if we could get the permits.
Yeah, pardon, this is Howard.
Hey,
Hi guys, I think permitting would be a nightmare, especially because the existing landfill is non-compliant. So, this is
Howard's
kind of this is a really great way to at least plug the hole for a while.
Yeah,
Thank you, Howard. So let the record reflect, Christy Kickham has come in and Howard is, with us via Zoom. So, any other questions or comments on this one, the solid waste?
you want to just recap for the two of them?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Please.
I think Howard, did you catch the full discussion on the solid waste?
I did not, but I think Brooke and I are on the same page.
Okay, yeah, I think, the majority of the discussion points Brooke made, thank you, and I thought were well made. I think to summarize it, a little bit differently is it's an important investment. It's been reviewed by two of our members, who are on the work group. One is at large, one is a select person. I feel I'm comfortable proceeding with this. Each of these in addition, each of these solid waste foundation item requests were in the percentile that they would just be voted through on a hopper vote.
Okay.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, so
And frankly, I don't think,
go ahead, Howard.
I would add, Stephen, I would add that there is no choice. It has to be done.
yeah.
I have a quick question, if I can, Steve.
Yeah, go ahead.
Does the planning talk at all about the existing land and what that would become? Is this for, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of DPW.
Yeah.
No, this isn't about moving
Got
DPW.
it.
This is about composter and,
Yeah.
transfer station.
Right, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
But the answer to your other question is not yet.
Okay, thank you.
even in that process. That I'm aware of anyway.
Okay,
Of course, a lot of people have ideas.
yeah, got it.
Okay, so where we are now, folks, is, I think we'll just vote these as they're put here, despite the fact we've already voted a couple of them, just to make it clean and easy.
Sure.
And I'd ask to waive the, reading of each of them. We'll vote as they appear on the screen with OY being out year, CY being current year. Both of those with respect to what year we're recommending these be funded. Are there any questions on what's being presented?
Just
Barry?
since Howard joined us.
Yep.
Was there any, and Christie joined us, was there anything else before we get ready to?
Yeah,
This thing?
Are we voting on the Pleasant Street paving?
no, actually, that's the one I wanted to add. There's two things I wanted to ask Sue, sorry.
All right,
Sue, the 24 Surfside Road property upgrades, do we have the group, Rory?
No, the reason you weren't getting it to appear is when I went into the project and look, it does not look like anybody has rolled it. I think that was.
Okay. Okay, so I think what we'll do is it possible for you to just send out a quick email to the membership and let them know? Please complete that and please be,
That's weird. Oh, yeah, mine isn't complete.
yeah,
oh,
I'm gonna ask a different approach on this. Yeah. Not inconsistent with how we process these other requests, unless someone has an objection, a material objection to the particular scope of work. If, when this is complete with respect to ranking by individual members and it scores within the at or above the average, it would normally be voted to be a current year recommendation. I would ask that we follow that procedure. So this would be voted current year, out year, subject only to the results of the membership's valuation.
I'm uncomfortable with that.
Okay,
because-
fair enough. Let's-
Because I think it's, as much as I have questions about this project, and I do think it involves housing. A housing unit, I believe, for the schools, which is desperately needed, and
of course.
I would hate to delay that. I mean, I guess I would just say, as you're doing your rankings, please consider that.
Okay.
You know, the process is imperfect in terms of unit creation for housing. It's not as ideal as I would like it, but I do understand that the difference between the school budget and the school decision-making process and the town budget and the work on housing, there is a wall, a financial firewall between the two. So I think I had made some comments about doing more collaboration or coordination.
Mhm.
And I was told that there are reasons why that can't happen.
Mhm.
And so that really helped me understand why their process is separate from what's being done on the rest of housing. And I do think extending our support to the school district on anything that improves their operations and provides housing for somebody
Okay.
is a good thing.
So your
I would hate-
concern is that it may
May not
score
pass.
below
Yeah.
current year, and therefore you'd like to be able to have discussion. So
Yeah.
look, I don't have.
So
an
I'm
issue
good with if it's above, having it go through, but if it's below,
You'd like to
bringing
support
it
it.
back for discussion.
Well, why don't we vote, I think consistent with our prior determination that any of these can be brought up at the next meeting for additional discussion.
Okay.
Is that, I think that would fall in that category. I'm not on either side of it. I just think procedurally we could do that. And then the Pleasant Street repaving Silver to Main. Sue, that was definitely an out year, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that one, and I think that was it. Now, just before we move forward, I think where Barry was going with this, Howard or Christie, of the requests that you see on the screen, regardless of the coloration of the cells, do you have any comments that would be material with respect to moving them from their current year or out year designation? No? In other words,
I do not.
we're gonna vote on them. Do you want to bite at the apple before we do? Howard?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I know climate action plan came in low. I know that, we did meet with Vince and Jeff. Did they recommend it out year? Is that our recommendation?
Yeah, Christie, just to bring you up to date on that, what we're gonna do, what we had voted on, what we can reconsider, is to write up a recommendation, which would be transferred to the department head, revolving, more succinctly around the scope is ambitious for the dollar amount. The dollar amount is insufficient, it seems, for the scope. Those should be better reconciled and for next year. And we would also like to have a better understanding of how comprehensive, we would also like that to consider bringing in comprehensive planning for things like EV charging stations and other requests that are either current year
Right,
or
right, right.
recent.
I'm content with that.
Okay, yeah, just so you have an idea where we were,
Yeah, fair enough.
okay?
Stephen, may
okay.
I have one thing? I think also with regard to rolling stock, I think there's so many trucks, and vehicles, backloaders. I don't understand why we don't look at them all as a huge,
What's that? Sorry?
The fleet management
Well,
townwide versus department.
that's gonna raise a second issue with me, because that certainly is one issue.
Mhm.
But I don't know if that's too broad a scope to do with what we're doing right now with this, and then maybe do it as a, once we're done with our deliberations. Get
Gary, I
into,
didn't think it would be for now. I thought it would be for next year.
that's what I'm saying as well, too. I think that after we're said and done with things, there's still some things we should be looking at.
So where, can I jump in
Yeah,
after Christie?
I was just gonna say, with all the vehicles, it's gonna be very hard for us to determine, even advisory wise, what's necessary and what's not, until, to me, there's a proper fleet manager that has, that really
thank you.
rounds it out.
Yeah.
To be honest with, I mean, I've been doing town committee stuff since 2001. Never been able to get a hold of vehicles. It's so easy, obviously ambulances, we know we've got, criteria with that and fire engines, but, just standard trucks, it's very difficult to determine properly. And it's not so much determining, do they need a new vehicle? How are they taking care of the old one? We just don't know that.
Right.
And, some are outside, some are inside, so it's very random. I think it's gonna be very hard to determine that until we have and we should probably at some point really get a log of all the departments and every vehicle they have year, and so we just have some sense of what that inventory looks like.
Well,
I was gonna put this under an umbrella unless, if that would be helpful, but go ahead.
I'll just make a quick comment. I mean, to me, it's interesting, right? Vehicles get rehomed department to department, and like an older vehicle might go somewhere where it's gonna be less intensely utilized for the last few years of its life, usable life. So seeing it holistically, I think might be valuable as an opportunity for the administration of fleet overall. And I don't know where our role falls into that. What is our job in that?
Yeah.
So our role would be along the lines of, and this is something we've done, but we could spotlight vehicles, for instance. And the idea one of our recommendations is central capital asset management. And capital asset department and the director and so on and so forth. Because this is a shortcoming, and this isn't a shortcoming that's someone's fault, this is a growth issue. But this is a shortcoming that we experience in multiple different areas where we have an asset class. So let's use vehicles, for example.
Yep.
One of the recommendations is to put the resources, professional resources in place, develop a capital asset needs assessment for any capital resource, pretty much all of them, and a database. And then in this instance, the fleet manager would have a view into the database that, and this involves a lot more than just simply what we're discussing, because you get into database design and so on and so forth. What information, what pieces of information are being recorded for the particular classification of asset.
Yeah.
But basically, you're developing a system that allows the town through professional resources to record, index, reference, perform analysis based upon a database of all this different information, and in this instance, it's a fleet.
Yeah.
We could spot, now where that fits into our process is a general recommendation. It would be in our report, we could spotlight vehicles as an example of one of the recommendations we already have, which is basically what I just kind of ran through. So that might be where we would
Yeah.
address it versus, for instance, 10-wheel dump truck, town needs capital asset management. Like it deserves more verbiage. And it would be more appropriate to address it as a general recommendation. We can do that by spotlighting it as a kind of a subset of a current recommendation, which is this approach to capital asset management. It's not unheard of. I mean, this is something that
Yeah.
large universities do.
Right.
Some larger cities. We are just at the point as a community that we've grown into
Yeah.
needing it in
Yeah.
order to be more functional, not only with respect to the assets on the ground, but planning for future asset acquisition, maintenance, management cycles, the whole 9 yards. Chris?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, just this small discussion on this brings up, like, we've never really held any department head and said, how long will this, when is this truck gonna get, this is a brand new truck. When do you expect this to get replaced? Like, no one's held to that. So I think a spreadsheet with all that data, and you gotta figure each year, that's not too much data to input, to be honest. Really, it's putting all the vehicles at once into a spreadsheet and then going from there, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's the ways to do it. It's just, but we gotta think too, this year,
Howard, one sec.
this year with, Parks and Rec getting new vehicles as the start of a new department, we gotta kind of take that out of the mix a little bit, because that's, understandable, but,
Yeah, Barry,
You can go to Howard first.
Howard? Barry's.
Yeah, thank you. I can't see if you could see me, but I just want to reiterate what Christie said in his first spiel, which is we really also need to know whether the equipment is stored inside or outside. And it kind of filters down to, we were asked to look at maintenance buildings or equipment storage buildings. And they're kind of like, okay, then we can look at this summary and can say, well, what equipment is going to go in there and what's currently happening with it, and be better able to appreciate the need maybe for those buildings.
Mhm. No, it makes sense. The utility of a database would be, as you know, Howard, we simply could, one of the Capcom reports for vehicles could at the beginning of the year would be a report on how many vehicles exist, how many are stored inside, how many are stored outside. And whether it's relevant, whether they're stored inside or outside.
Yeah.
So there's the utility of developing central management has value throughout the decision-making and recommendation-making chain. It's just a matter of, as we all know, having the housing resources and other resources available to actually have people in place to help put the other people in place. Barry.
Yeah, and well, the other thing too is you also have to look at, if you have a fleet manager, they're gonna look at the entire thing from a holistic standpoint too. Okay, the truck that you have, maybe we could squeeze a little bit more life out of it and trade it off with one of the other departments who needs something in the meantime.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to have a spreadsheet in front of me trying to make that analysis without really working with it for quite some period of time. And that's where I think a fleet manager would just make such a big difference, as opposed to having each individual department rely upon us to fill that role.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, that makes sense. And then go ahead.
So anyways, I want to use that as a springboard because, and if you want, I'll wait a little bit. Because that's not really the only asset class that's out there that needs a little bit better management than I think what we're
No, there's a wide variety. I mean, housing is one that's coming
Bingo.
into play and so on and so forth. The thing that I just want to touch on quickly, and then Christie, is this isn't, you know, the process would be that we spotlight something, we make a recommendation. Then there needs to be, you know, elected leadership involvement to help make determinations and help steer actual implementation at the administrative level. Keep in mind, like, one of the difficulties that comes up, fleet management, is the police and the fire. I know you know this, but for the people at home watching, watching and eating popcorn, police and fire are not gonna be necessarily addressed the same because of the sensitive nature of the vehicles and their performance and so on and so forth, as opposed to DPW, natural resources, plus our-aligned home. Those all more or less could fall into categories. There's a policy my point being is there's policy level decisions on how to approach, not whether or not to manage them, but how these those types of disparate aspects of the class come together under a fleet manager. Is it that a fleet manager tracks it all so that it's centrally tracked, but for instance, police and fire address their own maintenance or not? That's the type of thing we don't get into. We,
Yeah.
thankfully, we just help to try and identify from the capital asset acquisition, management, useful life and decommissioning side of it.
I think our report should just highlight the difficulty for us to analyze it without the context.
Yeah,
Right.
And that more context across the system would
Would be
be
helpful.
helpful.
And, you know, right, and I
Yeah,
think,
and a replacement schedule of sorts would help us analyze. Like to your point, we buy this, the expected life is 8 years, so 8 years from now, is it 7 years from now, are they asking early because it was stored outside, or are they get another year because it's inside?
Or if they're not taking care of it.
Or,
I mean,
that.
you know, the easy way to not approve a vehicle is if you don't have any service records and you didn't take care of it. Why do you get a new vehicle?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, that's.
or
But
pretty
it-
hard
there's,
line, but-
there's a lot more to
Rejecting
the analysis too. Fair price, you know, prices may be going off the wall in a year or so. It may be more advantageous to swap that vehicle out if there's better utility with a newer vehicle coming in. We saw that with one of the vehicles there. There's really just a variety of things.
Oh, yeah, it's.
Yeah, we
And
That
there
have to
are-
be looked at within
Yeah.
that. And I think getting someone who could at least just cull that information together and then parse out the final results to us
yeah, and you know,
would be helpful.
to some extent, that's, one thing is that type of a resource is a unicorn in some regards, because you've got a fleet manager who's gonna tend to be mechanically oriented, who is going to tend to know that aspect. They may not have the understanding of database development and the other
Oh my gosh,
aspects.
we are so in the weeds now.
Yeah, so
are,
this is
we
the-
are, that's.
Yeah, well, no, I'm trying to bring us back.
Yeah.
These are examples of elements that we would not be getting into.
Right,
We can make a recommendation based upon how these types of things are typically handled by doing a little bit of legwork. And then I'm a big proponent of you don't identify a problem without a solution. And I don't think a
agree.
solution is as simple as saying, well, we need someone who can take care of this. So a little bit of putting some legs under this stool and making sure they're solid in a recommendation. The groundwork has already been done. It's in our report. Again, we can simply spotlight as one example, an area that we believe needs some focus in development for future years is vehicles and that class of asset management. Barry, and then we're gonna move on.
and no disrespect intended, if you get someone who's there, who's gonna have to deal with this on a bigger, broader basis. When it comes to us, we're only as good as the information provided. And then again, too, none of us are, it's. What's the word I'm looking for here? Maybe we're a little bit amateur about things, whereas opposed to getting someone professional in to look at the bigger picture of managing all those dynamics. It's really, you know what I'm saying? And it looks like, from what I can tell too, it's not decreasing, it's increasing as time moves along. So I think there's a lot more components here that need to be looked at.
Yes,
But centralizing it through someone who makes that their life's process, their work process. Would be a really helpful thing, I think.
yeah, I don't disagree. The only aspect that I would put a finer point on is our group has a wide cross-section of
Yeah.
experience and expertise, and it's very diversified and it's very helpful. And I think our weighing in on these elements is what makes our committee beneficial to the town. Hopefully, over time anyways. Okay, so we're gonna come all the way back to a simple vote on these matters. And is there a motion to advance these requests subject to the recommendation of Cohen, noting that 24 Surfside Road property upgrades, if this group Rory is below the norm, we will revisit that particular request at our next meeting.
So moved.
On your motion, Brooke.
Second.
Christie? Oh, on your motion.
Aye.
Christie?
Aye.
Barry?
Aye.
Howard?
He's frozen.
You're frozen.
He's in
I think he's sleeping.
He's in an airplane, isn't
He's, I think he's sleeping. PJ?
Aye.
Excellent. Good to hear you. Howard? All right.
Yeah, he's probably up.
Get a screenshot. That's an excellent picture.
he?
Okay.
Aye.
Work group. Aye, thank you.
There you go.
Our next meeting, other than, if necessary, 24 Surfside Road property upgrades, and if members want to discuss any of the ones we just voted, will be, really just to move into work group mode for the report and recommendations. So if, what I'll do is send out a quick email asking membership if they, excuse me, want to weigh in. Sue, you're gonna, sorry, you're sending out, did you send an email on the 24 Surfside, Rory?
I will after the meeting's over.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just if, maybe we can coordinate, after the meeting on and informing membership that unless they have a question on these, I don't want to have everyone come to the meeting and then there be no reason for you all to be here, other than, Howard and PJ for the report writing, kind of kicking that off. So my thought is that if we just broadcast, if I'm thinking out loud here, if you have a concern about this, the vote of these items, let us know. I think it's gonna get too convoluted. I think we're gonna have our meeting. I'm gonna suggest it be via Zoom. And then that way, if, we don't need people to stay on, for discussing requests, you can all, say goodbye.
Yep.
And the report group can stick around. And then the report writing work group, Peter, if you're feeling better, maybe shoot me a text. And Howard, it looks like you're on a plane. It'd be beneficial if we met here and if we could get Sue to zoom in. But we'll play it by ear. All that. Go ahead.
My
I'm sorry.
schedule is, I'm gonna be back on island for the September, or excuse me, the January 11th solid waste meeting. So, definitely.
Zoom. Okay, so we'll count you in as Zoom. Okay, we'll count you in as
Yeah.
Zoom. All right. Okay, so we had a vote, that was positive. We covered what was next. The date of the next meeting is Thursday, the 4th at 1 PM. And with that, entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
Moved.
Brooke, on your motion?
Aye.
Christie?
Aye.
Barry?
Aye.
Howard?
Aye.
PJ?
Aye.
All right, thanks, everyone. Thank you, Sue.
Thanks.
Howard, the oxygen mask just dropped above your head.
I know.